Hi, sorry for the delay at getting the critique for this depth of field project underway. It's been a wild and woolly week at school and the other classes, but finally here we're getting started. I think there are going to be maybe 3 parts to this to get through all of the images. There are a bunch of them. What I need to have you remember is the grading is based on whether you did the depth of field part the way it was instructed. I may be talking in this critique about some aesthetic and compositional issues, but what I'm really grading you on was the depth of field part. So let's get underway and see what we've got. Okay, we have this really cute portrait here of this little girl. Nice depth of field. The background is wonderfully soft so that she really stands out. Great catch. There is really not a lot to say about this shot. The only thing you might do to help bring her out a little is to vignette this portrait a little bit. So let's just do that really quickly. We're going to bring this down for our typical duplicate layer, and we'll make that layer a multiply layer. And we're going to make it an inverted mask, meaning I'm going to hold down the Alt key or Option key on a Mac while I click on the layer mask icon. Now I have this black mask and the shot looks like it normally did. I need to use a white brush and I want to set the opacity down. I want to add just a little at a time. Make a nice big soft brush. We can start bringing this down very subtly. And I want to make this overbearing on the shot. I'm going to bring up the opacity just a little to maybe 30%. There we go. And now all we've done is drop that background down a little bit so that the little girl's smiling face sticks out at us a little better. That's really a very nice shot. You did extraordinarily good job with this. Congratulations. Now, let's see what else we got. I'll bet this is the same little girl. But in this case, we have a deep depth of field shot. It really seems to work pretty well. Everything from her to the background is nice and sharp. You've really put her in the location here. Works very well. The only thing I would do is I would tone down this bright spot on the sidewalk, or maybe these 2 bright spots. And the reason for that is they are light. They're drawing us away from the real shot, which is her. That's where we want to look. We don't want to have our eye drag away to something else. So I'm going to make a duplicate layer to start with. And then I'm going to crop this just a bit in order to bring our eye into her a little. I can also get rid of this sky somewhat. That's not really telling us anything. We'll bring this up. Bring this in. Bring both sides in, actually. Hit enter to take it. I think I'm going to bring that top down just a little more. And there we have the same shot, but now clearly it's the little girl that's the most important part. So I'm going to go ahead and keep that. I'll flatten it since I didn't need to use the 2 layers. But now I really would like to put some tone into there. And so to do that, what I'm going to do is pick up the real tone that's around the sidewalk there, which is this gray. And now I'm going to load that into a brush, and I'm going to tell the brush to darken. And that means that the only place this brush is going to paint is on its own color or lighter. And I don't want to be full strength here. I want to see some of that. So I'm going to knock this down to maybe 15, 16%. Now I can knock that right down. And there we have it. We still have our shot with this delightful little girl, but those highlights are no longer as problematic as they were before. Nice job. Let's go on. Well, here we have a kitty cat shot. Nice close-up, shallow depth of field. You might be able to use just a little more depth of field. You do seem to have caught kind of the important parts. You caught the nose. You caught this eye. This eye is already starting to go out just a little bit. But it's a very nice portrait of the cat. Again, be really, really careful of all of these incredibly bright areas in a shot, even out of focus. They're going to try to take our eye away from the main shot, which is right here. So with a slight change in angle, this could have been solved, but since we can't change the angle after the effect, let's see if we can do this. Now, we still get to see what the kitty cat looks like. We could darken this a little bit the same way that we did the sidewalk in the previous one. Same for over here. We could bring this down a little bit with a vignette if we wished. The only part that's kind of a problem is this out of focus foreground, which is probably the cat's tail or is something else that's wrapped up in this little bundle of fur. And you might want to darken that down a little bit so that you're really looking here. But overall, it definitely does the narrow depth of field job very well. So cool. Let's go on to the next one. We have an outdoor scene here. We're calling it max depth of field, although there isn't really a huge maximum area here. Maybe if you consider this area behind the trees as in the distance, that would do it. But it does appear to take almost everything from the foreground that isn't being wiped out by the flare to the background and has it in focus. Okay, cool. So we have the depth of field issue solved. The big issue here is, what is this shot about? This is really cute with the sun and the flare and all of that, but the shot is difficult to analyze based on what it's supposed to be. Is it a shot about the sun? In which case, what is all of this stuff over here? Most of the image, or at least half of the image, is taken up over here with this part of the world. All of it fairly sharp, most of it out of the flare, but with no real focal point. Over here, we have the sun as a focal point, but it is so big and so flaring that we can't really see much in it. So when you're taking a shot like this, really stop and think, yes, this is a technical exercise. I'm supposed to get all this depth of field in it because the silly old professor said so. But as a photograph, what is it really saying to you? And that's something you've really got to look at and try to impose into your shot. So let's go on. Well, Candace, here we have a couple of interesting problems. This has not only minimal depth of field, its sizing is off a little bit. Let me go see what it actually is. This size, 72 by 400, this is just too small based on what we're asking for. But that's really not the main problem here. Our main problem is the depth of field is so shallow that nothing in the picture is sharp. So we really need to go back and attempt to focus this thing. What else do you give me? Well, we have a nice shot of this flower on the railing of the balcony. You've got some really pretty out of focus highlights in the background. Nice bouquet, as they say, and No pun intended on the flowers. Bokeh is a Japanese word, and it refers to the diffusion and the quality of these out-of-focus highlights. But all of this over here is really distracting, is really not helping us. So what I would do with this is bring this shot in, maybe even make it a vertical. That's certainly a possibility. Or if you were going to do it as a horizontal, maybe you could do it like this. Either of these would be preferable because you have eliminated a lot of this out of focus bright area that's just drawing your eye to it. So this is something that we could fix in post. I'm going to back up and crop this again. See if I can make it even a little better. I don't need all of this wall. This is okay to go off of it. I've got this movement going in this direction, so I need to give it a little bit more space. This is really kind of interesting patterning up in here. Now I think we've got a stronger shot. You have the flower that's looking really nice. You've got this soft, sparkly background to it. I might bring this tone down a little bit, but overall this works pretty nicely to show off that flower. So I would take that. What do we got next? Okay, here we have a nice sunset shot. That's a really perfect catch. Makes me want to know, did you get the green flash when this was going down? But when you've got a sunset and you've got the Earth's horizon in it, you need to do two things. Number one is you need to make sure, and I'm pulling down a guideline here, that the horizon is straight, which it's not. So let me pull that up out of the way, and we'll straighten it. We'll come over here to the ruler tool. It's in this same collection of tools that the eyedropper is, and we want the ruler. We use a little pointer there, and we're going to draw a line on this horizon. Now we'll come up to the taskbar, and we'll tell it to straighten that layer. And there it is. Now the good news is it wasn't off much, so we're not going to lose much. We've lost so little that I think we're not going to have to rebuild any of this. We can simply crop out the sides that are off the page. Now, since I'm ready to crop up or down, I need to make a decision. Which of these areas is most important to this picture? The surf, which is full of all kinds of interesting patterns and tones, or the sky, which is pretty blank? So you make a choice. When it's your shot, you get to make the choice. Since I'm playing with it, I'll make one. But in this case, I think we can make this a little more interesting by putting that horizon very close to the thirds breakdown. And now we're really going to concentrate on all of this a little better. The timing, the color, this is really rich. You've created a very, very nice shot with this. Very cool. Here we have another nice flower. Beautiful, beautiful white rose. Very nice catch. Again, we've got a lot of area we don't need. Where is our shot? It's right here. It's right here. So let's make that our shot. This would be a good candidate, actually, for a square shot, I think. Or even a vertical. Slightly vertical. But square works pretty well. Now, we've still got that rich black background that's making all of this stand out. And we've got this beautiful flower that's right close to the middle, but is divided up a little better. This is really a strong shot. You lit it perfectly, or at least found good lighting for it. It's a really nice shot. You just needed to get rid of a lot of that extraneous stuff. The problem is we got rid of so much of it that we really dropped the resolution of the shot fairly significantly. But this is cool. Nicely done. Well, and here we have the good old Balboa Park Botanical Garden, a deep depth of field shot, nicely done. We definitely have everything in focus from the foreground with these plants. We have, what do we have, little ducks on here? Is that what's going on? Then we have the Botanical Garden, nice and crispy. That's very cool. You did an excellent job on this. The only thing I would do aesthetically, I think, to make this stand out is I need to do something with the sky, because this is so light, but the sky is lighter, and it's taking away from this nice sense of the early morning light. So we could do a couple of things. One is, let's start with a duplicate layer. And we're going to make this a luminosity layer. And you may have noticed nothing happened. Well, that's because what a luminosity layer does is it takes the tones from the top layer and imposes them on the bottom layer. We're actually looking at the bottom layer as it's been modified by the top layer. In this case, they're both identical, so nothing changed. But we're about to change that. If we go to Image, Adjustments, Black and White. Now, if you look over here close at these icons, this top layer is now a black and white layer. Why don't we see it in black and white? Because we're seeing the bottom layer based on what these tonalities are like. So, I'm going to bring up the yellows just a little bit to put some brightness back in this. And I'm going to bring down the cyans. See what happens if I bring the blue down a little bit too. Want the greens back up. Now, can you see what we're doing with this particular function? We're adjusting tonalities based on color. It's an incredibly powerful tool. So we'll say OK. And that now gives us a sky which isn't quite so distracting, because we can see the rest of this. This actually now appears to be a little brighter than the sky, so our eye is going to be drawn in here where it's supposed to be. We could go in and even darken this down a little, just a little. I don't think it's necessary, but we could do it. It might make it a little richer. So this is a very good catch. Nicely done. Nice deep depth of field. Okay, one last one for this first part. I assume this is Moonrise over Alleyway as a takeoff on Adams's Moonrise over Hernandez. Certainly the depth of field is deep in this. You got that right. That worked out pretty well. From the standpoint of, did you catch the moon? Yes, or it's a UFO, or maybe the mothership or something like that. But again, the shot is a little hard to analyze. What is it really about? The moon is so small, it's not really about the moon. That's just an added thing up here that could be a gigantic dust spot. Here's where the shot is, if there is one. So that would be the area we would want to really concentrate on. I'm not sure how totally exciting the alleyway is, but, who knows? Maybe all kinds of fascinating things go on in this alley. If that were true, then we could bring this down. We don't need all of that wall. If we wanted to create an urban scene saying, here's what my alley is like, then we could do this and bring that into a little better sizing for us. But like I say, unless this is a surveillance shot showing nothing happening, there's not a lot specifically for this shot to help us. Okay, so that's it for part 1. We're going to be on to part 2 very quickly. See you then.